Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, AmaRouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
We have the amazing Emma Houston in the house.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Oops, upside your head. I haven't had breakfast yet, so...
Me neither.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Emma Houston is a dance artist and choreographer based in London. Their latest work saw them performing for Olivier Award-winning hip-hop theatre companies Boy Blue, Red, and Zoo Nation, Message in a Bottle. Emma founded Houston Dance Collective in 2016. The company has previously received ACE funding to develop the Purple Jigsaw, an explosive celebration and unravelling of gender nonconformity not often visible in hip-hop spaces. Houston Dance Collective have most recently been co-commissioned by Dance Exchange and Punch Records for Birmingham International Festival 2021. Emma has worked for many other companies, notably including Far From the Norm, Rosie Kay, Crying Out Loud, Adam Cameling and Ella Mesma. And
That's you!
Oh, that's me! Emma battles as a breaker nationally and internationally, including Red Bull BC1 UK Cypher, where they reached the semi-finals in the B-Girl Battle in 2019. Whoop, 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 whoop!
Bro, bro, bro.
Beast. Casual beast.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning has broken and all that jazz.
Just about, barely. It's an early one.
I kind of want to talk about breaking. Is it all right to talk about breaking? And
Yeah, it's great to talk about breaking.
Okay,
I'm
awesome.
kind of pleasantly surprised that someone wants to talk about breaking with me.
Really? Why? Is it there's no one wanting to do that at the moment?
No. Do you know what it is? Sometimes I do interviews and like everyone wants to talk about all the other stuff and not actually what my craft is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, that was me having a little kind of quip at people.
It's interesting because I guess this is kind of what we've been talking about in this series, is like where as an artist you're getting booked for what you represent kind of thing, rather than like, and obviously, yeah, there's so many grey areas, isn't there, within that. Obviously they're going to book the person who is great for the job, but sometimes it feels like the booking, it's more about that kind of like, what boxes are you ticking, or like what can you put on stage that shows them in a good light, rather than
the diversity box, whatever that is, the kind of who can talk about this thing, and then what ends up happening is that person is then almost like becomes a token for talking about that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's like, well, wait a minute, first and foremost, I'm an artist that wants to talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, so I had the pleasure of meeting Emma so long ago. When was that? Like 2010 or 9 or 10?
Well, I was not in London until 2011, so I believe it was probably then. Yeah.
So it must have been 2011 then. That would be when it was. I can remember when it was. It was at either a breaking, I think it might have been either breaking battle or like a breaking convention after party, something like that. So breaking, and we met breaking, and Emma, you're so beast. You're such an amazing breaker. I would love to just hear a little bit about your journey. Like, what are you making now? What are you excited about right now as a
thank you,
breaker?
Ella, for such a question. What am I excited about as a breaker? It's this early in the morning, so you're gonna get random replies. Well, I think right now I'm really excited about play. I'm really excited about like actually just having a great time with myself, dancing. That's really where I'm at. I think I think the pre. I kind of will talk about the pre-corona me and the post-corona me. I think before COVID, sweeping generalization of my life before COVID, by the way, but like I think I could tend to put a lot of pressure on myself for certain outcomes, or maybe not even outcomes, but just measuring of my enoughness of what I'm doing in what area. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but like
that makes complete sense.
Yeah, in a way where it was like, I think with the kind of the crux of that was probably consistency and like these kind of principles of like, I guess, athleticism to kind of show up on a regular basis and be very like kind of disciplined in the sense of like really make sure that if I don't do X, Y, Z, then I failed, or and that's a very dramatic sort of way to put it, but like the kind of measuring up myself with myself a lot of the time, in a way that kind of I guess judgment or and indecision potentially. So like there'd be the kind of back and forth going with how I was feeling, and then going against what I was feeling, and then either way still having a fallout from that.
Yeah.
And it just kind of meant that it was just not really that fun.
Yeah.
At times. And not that it's like it has to be fun all the time either, but I think that there's kind of now my metric is different. How I'm kind of like measuring it is different. So I'm kind of wanting to get, and I think it's kind of a lot linked to creativity in the sense that allowing that creativity to be cultivated in a less pressured environment for myself. And I guess I'm kind of just doing that as like, mini experiments, and just kind of leaving something alone when it's not working, or kind of going, it's okay for me to put that down and go over here and try something new. And also let myself in my training sessions be just led by the music.
Nice.
So I've kind of just finding my own new kind of structure to train, and letting it not be a set thing.
Yeah, sounds like you've introduced a lot more freedom and flow into it, and kind of stepping out of the kind of rigidity of training and also creating, which I know a lot of artists can create for themselves. And I identified massively with that, and kind of swinging from one to the other. But it sounds like actually having had this year in between, and maybe, of course it is because of the year that you've had, that you're actually like, oh God, hold on, actually, where's the fun element again? Where's the play? Like, where's the core reason why I want to do this, aside of all the shoulds, metrics, and kind of pressure we put on ourselves to be better than we were last week, last month, last year, to keep growing all the time. Actually, what if I just create in a space that's free and playful, and see what comes from that, see what kind of growth comes from that as well, because it will feel different.
It's making me think of like all the famous musicians from back in the day, and how actually like true genius isn't from doing what other people tell you or learning a structure and following it. It's about finding out for yourself, finding your way, and it's like the Mozarts and the Beethovens, that actually what you might create now with that freedom of the rules, and with the level that you already have and the experience and the knowledge that you already have. It's really exciting. Can't wait to see your next creation.
Thank you. I think it's like what Amma was saying as well about now I've forgotten it, but that was really quick. I really had it there, and then it just evaporated. About like also kind of like one thing being like, oh, this is progress, and kind of seeing progress as a very narrow thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like all of the things around, like for example, so obviously for those who are listening, they may not know, but I was physically out of action for about 11 months to a year because of having COVID, and then it having quite an extreme effect on my health. And then that was kind of like, I went through a whole grieving process of that, because I was like, I'm essentially losing like my relationship with my body as I know it now. And I guess it's kind of a miraculous in a way to be like physically moving and doing, like I did windmills for the first time in a year and 2 months, last week, and they were there, and it was like, oh shit, like the body, all of these other things I've been doing in my life have informed how I'm coming back to my practice, and that actually, yes, time has been lost, but also so many other things have been gained, like that are going to feed into that, and then it kind of has helped me measure progress in a different way.
Beautiful.
And actually, and by metric, Ella, what I mean is like, so if my aim at an event is to win, then if I don't win, I failed, right? But if my aim is to have fun, then I can walk away from that day going,
right, so
that was
true.
great. Or, or just, I want to go out there and like just be really present and kind of see if I can channel my nerves into something that is like, that doesn't make me shrink away into myself. It makes me expand and share myself with the space.
Wow, and it's making me really think about this idea of our cup being full up, of how our attitude is towards life. And by being present and by choosing to enjoy life, actually you're also having this beautiful ripple on other people in the space, and really being that activist by, it's interesting actually, because I know all three of us are reading the book Pleasure Activism, right? And it feels like this is a form of pleasure activism. This is really about actually, what's it for? Why am I doing it? And it really coming from that space of heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the dancers as well, and the movers and the artists that always make the most impression on me is the ones who move me, that move, that are really kind of present with what they're doing. And it's not it's not necessarily the one who wins or the one who has the main maybe focal point. I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting what we connect to. And I guess for me, it'd be then, okay, how can I actually really share that with that person, that they've like moved me in that way, or that actually I've really enjoyed watching them express themselves, and that's inspired me, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like kind of keep that kind of energy going, because also I know that can get really hard if you're that person and you're giving all of this stuff all the time, and maybe you're not getting that recognition, and not recognition in terms of like fame, but recognition in terms of like, that was really beautiful, thank you.
Like I see you, and thank you for sharing yourself with us.
It's making me think about unlearning as well, of like, what do we need to unlearn to really enjoy and be present in dance? And I think particularly like, having also, I'm calling it growing up in the breaking scene, but very much as a dancer, having been in that scene, I definitely felt a lot of judgment and a lot of kind of like shoulds and ways that I needed to be and things I needed to do. And I think that this unlearning can actually lead to so much positivity, and even that, like, that person, I've made up this imaginary person, as you described, that person that's there kind of doing their thing and doing it their way, and being unapologetic about that. Maybe it's even unlearning the kind of the needing recognition. I wonder if that's a beautiful gift to others to kind of
actually just be there.
Yeah.
And I guess by recognition, I'm not so much meaning like that person maybe would need it, but just that there's a way of kind of affirming that person or something, you know?
Yeah, kind of reminds me of the infinity symbol, but just that, you know, that continuous flow of that person is sharing themselves from a really true place, and then you're affirming that by feeding back to them, and then it just continues to feed their energy. Yeah. And I do think that often, like you're saying, often that isn't shared. And I think a lot of people tend to think that person knows or hears it a lot, you know, or someone else is sharing it with them. And actually, that's often not the case. So I do think it is really important to have those kind of exchanges.
Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, anytime that someone's come up to me and shared that something I've done or shared has like moved them or you know, made them feel something, or even just made them really happy, made them smile, or, you know, anything like that, that's always something that kind of is an affirmation, because I'm like, oh great, that's being received. Because sometimes you can put it out and you maybe don't know if that is, it feels like that way to yourself,
Yes.
but is that translating to the others in the space, to the audience, to whomever? So
it's interesting. It's making me think about why we do things as well, and like how this ties into our identity. With it made me think of a moment when Maren said, I really liked some set I did somewhere, something I did somewhere, and how actually at the time I was so busy resolving my own identity, you know, like I wasn't really being present in the space, that it was like, almost like, oh, it kind of really threw me to receive a compliment. And that then it just made me think about, you know, so often we're not able to be present because we're just busy resolving our own identity and believing like maybe it's I'm not good enough. Like I really think I personally had that as a breaker, going a lot around in my head a lot. And and how when we can step outside of that, then we can really play.
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting. It's interesting as well, that cycle, because I think when you first start, at least for myself, when I first started dancing, that freedom was really there. And then it was like the more you're introduced to form, foundation, technique, rules, and your place essentially in the wider context, you know, it kind of, and also then the other maybe sort of like gender binary things on top of, you know, the layers of it, that it can then become a space where you're like, wait a minute, how did I get to this place where I feel really stifled or really like restricted in what I can and can't do? And then it's like kind of realizing you're trying to stay to this mold to also to like preserve and respect the culture and its form, but at what point do you then break that and move forward? Because I think that was definitely something I was like super obsessed with for a long time, was like form and foundation, and then it was like, then it was kind of like a double-sided coin, because it's like, well, oh, but then where does my originality come in? You know, I'd like always felt like, oh, I have this big personality, and I have the style, and the kind of, how do I bring the two things together to be like one thing? And that means maybe getting really quirky or weird, or bringing it, you know, and allowing myself to do that. So I guess I see that now as what I'm kind of letting myself to bring in.
That's your genius. That is the genius, like Mozart.
You can call me Mozart. Okay, fine.
Just hearing you talk, Emma, about this, I guess, this new approach or renewed approach to how you're creating and how you're approaching dance and your art, makes me think a little bit about something I heard Selena Barker say. And she is an author and a coach, and she's just recently released a book called Burnout. And she was talking to Emma Gannon on Emma Gannon's podcast, which is Ctrl Alt Delete, and she was talking about burnout and kind of exhaustion, and also about, you know, how as a society, definitely in a capitalist society, we're all super consumed and concerned with output and production and how much are we doing, and we measure that in terms of our progress. And she was saying that, actually the elements that we need to thrive are exactly the same elements we need to be our most productive. And within these elements that we need to thrive, yes, there's output there, but there's also rest, and then there's also play and creativity. And how much time and space are we dedicating to rest, play, and creativity versus to output? And these kind of external measurements of how progressive I'm being because I'm doing, like you were saying, whether that was how can't remember the word you used, but measuring yourself against yourself in terms of your physical ability, your this, that, but actually just feels like now you're turning more towards the other elements that we need to thrive as humans, and that will actually, how that's going to impact your progressiveness is going to be really, really beautiful and interesting to see, I think, because we don't often give them the equal space.
It's true, we don't. And like, I think I started when, especially kind of recovering like from COVID, it was like I had to schedule in rest points in the day for myself, like as I would do in a kind of like to-do list.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And it was like, that was really interesting. It was like, oh, actually, this is essential for my progress, is like putting this rest point in, and then having some time to cultivate my own energy or creativity, like moving for and kind of however small or large that could be, depending on where I was at. It could be the smallest little thing ever that felt creative, or like I got really into cooking, and then that was like my creative outlet for a while.
Yeah.
And it was connected to obviously me like feeding myself and like
nurture,
that
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so the actual thing itself doesn't have to be connected to your discipline. And I think that's also kind of like leads me quite nicely into like the project I'm about to embark on now, which is going to be with musicians. So Beautiful. It's going to be dance and musician collaboration, and that again is, it's like collaborating with another art form is so invigorating and refreshing to see how another type of artist is inspired or makes, or what they bring to the table. And I'm excited about that, because I think as well the dance stuff can get really insular, and it becomes really about the dance world, and actually even just breaking out of the dance world and going, there's like so many worlds everywhere.
And defining ourselves as artists rather than defining ourselves as something that's actually kind of limiting your experience, or your I suppose like also who you meet and how you might collaborate. How might we see that? Where might we see that project?
Well, that's going to be at Birmingham International Dance Festival on the 25th and 26th of September.
Wonderful.
If all goes to Corona plans. And we open up the way we're meant to, potentially.
Fingers and toes crossed.
But so that's going to be, the project is called Like Mercury, and it's a collaboration between Houston Dance Collective and Bellatrix Music.
Amazing.
So yes, it's
delicious.
It's happening, and there will be, between now and then, there will be a couple of sharings and things like that. So, when those details come through, I'll send them to you, and you can put them in your podcast link bio. What's it?
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, please do. 100%.
Awesome. I want to, but if this is like a place that is like I'm going backwards, then let me know. But I'm going to say it, and then you can just be like no or yes. I was thinking about the you putting rest times into your life during COVID times, and kind of dance institutions, and like, for example, training with Renegade, and these places where I often felt it was like push, go, and the rest thing was something that maybe we have to learn ourselves, but it's not very much kind of taught in dance institutions or in dance companies even. It's like
I feel like that's the antithesis of everything like dance training. Rest is like
absolutely
not even a factor.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Interestingly, sorry, just to also slide in there.
Yeah, go on.
It's really funny that you say that, Emma, because that's exactly something that I'm implementing from last week, is scheduled rest points in like a to-do list, like in my tasks.
Me too.
Because I was really aware that I wanted more creativity and more play and more rest in. And whilst like over the years, it's definitely improved, and like my relationship to kind of doing versus all of those elements, even the fact that I said versus just says it all. It's definitely improved. If I look back, I can see the consistent progress, but I was like, okay, how can I weave it into my life even more in a way that is more present? And I was like, I need to schedule it in. I have to schedule it in. That's the way I was able to develop a consistent yoga practice. Actually, why don't I do it with rest? And why don't I do it with play? Because otherwise they always get pushed to the peripherals. And, I'm so naturally driven and ambitious that I will always put doing and productivity above it, before it, even if I don't want to, even if I'm trying really hard. 8 times out of 10 I will. So it's just so wicked that you said that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm doing. And also this month for Wild Within, which is my wellness platform with Layla, who's a herbalist, our theme and focus is rest. So it was like, you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to be accountable to what you're talking and writing about. How can you do that more? And you just said it, and I'm like, yep, boom, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great to hear that that's something that you're doing as well. And I think it will definitely, I think that improves consistently being able to do the things you want to do. Because you're kind of not doing, like, I was very used to doing bursts of like intense everythings, and then the fallout from that was like, ugh. Rather it's probably better to have a sustained ability to do it, right? But I think also what you said, Ella, about the kind of, and I mean both of you said like just about the antithesis of dance training is like this idea of listening to your body and resting when you need to rest. It's like, it's so weird, it's so counterintuitive, because we're being asked to literally our body to be the vessel for our expression, yet to listen to its limits is not kind of
not encouraged, is it?
Looked at. Yeah, it's not encouraged, it's not maybe allowed, or it's like it's always about overriding that boundary of what we can do and what we think we can do, and where I do think there's a belief of like, yes, we can do more, of course. It's like finding what is my body saying that's enough, and what's my body saying actually but I could probably do more. And they're two different voices.
Yes, being able to tune into it so you can hear which one is actually talking to you. So it's like, just bringing more compassion in, I think, and like you're saying, fine tuning.
And this linking back to the grey areas that we spoke about at the beginning, in terms of this world of dance where our identity is so kind of tied into it, but then there's all these kind of grey areas going on. And I think a really important one for us is to learn to say no, and to learn to listen to what our body is saying first. That maybe it's not doing it the same way it's been done before. Maybe it doesn't have to be I don't know, that we work in this way that we push ourselves beyond our limits, and then we come to burnout. That actually, when we really come from that place of wholeness and that cup full up and listening to what our body needs, then we can, first of all, we can be an even better mover and performer, but also we can lead by example, and we can create those ripples in terms of that person, that creation that we've been talking
way
about.
Of working.
That person doing it for themselves ultimately, and for the freedom that we came to dance for in the first place.
And that's exactly what with this project that, like Mercury, that I'm about to do, we had 2 play days yesterday and the day before, and you know, I had a real stepping back in the studio as a quote unquote like maker of work. You know, I had a real like moment of anxiety going in, because all of the beliefs I'd held about what it means to do that or to be that came to the surface, and like there was this idea of like productivity equals this, or procrastination equals that, and we can only have a productive day if this happens. And like I kind of really came up against like this old set of beliefs, and like the core part of this project is about making work in a holistic way, and like bringing that wholeness in, and then making from that place. And it's so hard to do it, because it's not all the things we've been told about making and dancing and doing is the opposite. And there's like something in my brain that's kind of needing to go, do you know what? It feels like you're doing less, but maybe less is more, or maybe the quality of that work will be better. And allowing that to be held in the space just as much as this other belief, not necessarily about eradicating either belief and thinking one is right and one is wrong, but just going, can they both be there, and can we experiment with them both being there? You know what I mean?
Love.
Mic drop, complete.
Yeah, done. I can't wait to see like Mercury.
Neither can I.
Yes, I'm really excited to share it, and I'm excited to share it.
Thank you so much for being our very special guest today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, honestly, the best way to start my Wednesday morning. Honestly, thank you so much. It's been delicious.
Oh, I love that.
And now she's going to eat a delicious donut.
Yeah, you're like, side-eye that donut. I see
the donut
you.
is in the space, just so you know, we can see the donut right now.
Yeah, I am.
Well, thanks for having me. You know that I'm a huge lover of both of you.
Likewise.
I love you.
Personally and professionally. So, yes, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am AmaRouge.
And we are PowerUp Podcast.